we're here today with Susie Shumake Anderson. Susie is definitely legendary, but her family, her racing family, is the Shumake name has a lot to do with the history and legendary part of Arizona, and we're trying to do some videos more on. Certainly, Susie's a lot of friends out there would be happy to see on the video, but just talk about the family and those days and what got you there and what made it so fun. So let's roll back. Where are you originally from?
Kansas City.
Okay, and what was your first interest in cars? I know you were a car girl.
Yep, dated a guy in our neighborhood, and he was all into cars. We couldn't eat in his 64 Chevy 409. He got me into making sure my car was always clean, inside and out. We'd go down to the levee in Kansas City to the river and drag race. It was one of those flags in the middle, and we were together about 4 years. And then a friend of mine in Kansas City lived in the neighborhood. His name was Dale Welch. And Dale worked for Don's Speed Shop in Lawrence, Kansas. And he got me a job there out of high school. And I worked at the speed shop, and they had an A-fuel dragster. And I started going to the races with them. Then I started working on the motors with them, driving the truck and trailer. And we went up to Manhattan, Kansas, up where Kansas State is, and went to a drag race there. And I met this guy, shorter than me. He was real funny, and his name was Trip Shumake. He was working for Dickie Harold back then.
He was driving for Dickie Harold's car.
Yeah.
Dale Welch he definitely been big in the industry.
He was the Jayhawker.
Right.
Fuel car. Yeah.
So, in high school, what did you drive?
I had a 63 327 Chevy, then a 66 396 Chevy, and all of them were 4-speeds. And we'd get up on the I-70, which wasn't that far from my house, and drag race from one entrance to the next entrance. And I'd always beat the guys.
Did you ever get pulled over?
Nope.
Never got caught?
Nope. The guys would give me their cars, their Camaros and stuff, 69 Camaros, and they go get him, and I'd get in their cars and beat them all. So I was a tomboy. I was my dad's firstborn son.
So you weren't the cheerleader in high school, or?
No, I was total tomboy. Painted the house, mowed the grass, worked on the cars. I'm still doing that. I'm still doing that at 75.
It's all been fun.
Yeah.
So you're a car girl. You definitely got to meet a lot of car racers along the way before we met Trip, and in the right place, the right time.
I had a crush on John Weeby.
Kansas John.
Yeah, he'd come to the race car shop, Don's Speed Shop, and I couldn't even talk. I'd have to just sit in my office and stare at him.
Yeah, he was one of my favorites. He really was. It was a lot of fun to watch. Kansas John, and there was a lot of people from the Midwest that were quite serious racers. Arnie Beswick and
Wilson Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're at this event, and there's this cute little guy. But great personality.
Real outgoing, right?
And you met Trip. How did you?
Okay, so I took my girlfriend with us, and she was short, and she had a large tutus or whatever you call them, boobs. She had really big boobs for a little tiny girl, and he instantly liked her, and she liked John Weeby. So I was stuck with Trip because he kept asking her out and she wouldn't go out. So he called me one night, and they were based out of Kansas City. So we went out and went dancing, and we had I ordered a Harvey Wallbanger back then. This was in 1970, 71, and he did too. I'm like, well, we dance alike and we drink the same drink. I guess it's just made that we're gonna do it. And then Dickie Harold was killed that September, and he had to go back to Phoenix where he lives, Trip. Mm-hmm. And he says, you want to go to Phoenix? Ever been there? And I said, nope. And that was 71, moved out here in October, and got married by the Justice of the Peace in Glendale in November.
So you got drugged to Phoenix.
Yep.
And came at the right time of the year.
Yeah, I did.
You didn't really saw how hot it could get till the next year, right? Yeah. So Trip drove for a lot of interesting people. A lot of people remember him way back as driving Chuck's Corvette and driving a couple funny cars here and there. But he also had a one race engagement. I think one of his first fuel rides was with Joe McKean, his top fuel dragster.
Boy, you're good.
And that's when I I got to meet him, but just help Joe with that car. And I knew him, but from that point on, I mean, he's just definitely he's the guy's guy. Being everybody everybody loved Trip. Just like
He was funny.
Funny guy, happy-go-lucky. He walked the walk and talked the talk. He didn't. I think he had a lot of transparency. He didn't. If you could tell he liked you because he would talk to you.
Yeah.
And it was really good. So you and Trip got married, but he wanted to go racing still.
Right. We
So-
both worked odd jobs. I worked at Chuck Speed Center for a while, and then he started working back there. And we just did odds and ends. Randy Ingram and his family, we'd wax their milk trucks because they worked for Carnation Milk. And when we first got married, we had no money. We were living with his sister and her husband, and Ken Ingram would pay us just to wax his big old red milk truck, and just so we had to make ends meet. And then we heard Connie Coletta was looking for some help on his funny car, the Bounty Hunter, and so Trip got a hold of him, and we moved up to Mount Clemens, Michigan, and worked for Connie. And that was the time when he was working with Shirley Downey, and she had the Bounty Huntress.
Mm-hmm.
And they were basically heart like a will. They were having an affair. We helped Shirley move out of her house in Schenectady when she left her husband, and so we were there for the whole deal. The two little kids, they each had a boy, John and Scott, and it was fun going on the road. But that was our first big experience, besides Dickie Harrell. And he had the first, Dickie had the first semi-truck. Billy Meyer had one years later, but Dickie, if you remember, he came in a big full-size pickup truck. He had several different cars.
Mr.
Chevrolet, yeah.
Absolutely, a lot of great in the Southwest racer out in New Mexico.
Yeah.
He kind of he was taken way too soon. Definitely for sure. He was a lot of fun to watch racing. He was kind of like the gentleman guy of drag racing.
Yeah.
In funny cars, and brought a lot of class to the
He did.
funny
He
car.
really did. And then he went to work for Kelly Chadwick and drove his car. He was out of Texas. He was a super nice guy.
The Trip had some rides along the way.
Oh yeah.
So he drove for that. He drove for Billy Meyer,
Yeah.
and of course Loper. But he drove with probably one or two drives, like in the maybe the Sundance and a couple different other.
Yeah. Sundance was one of our favorite cars. Dennis Fowler's Sundance.
Tell us about Dennis Fowler.
He was a character. We're good friends with Chadwick Fowler, his son, who was about 2 years old when we were driving and racing the Sundance, and we were on the Coca-Cola circuit. And Dennis he'd come in when he could come in. He was still living and working and doing stuff in Alaska. And so sometimes we'd get little Chad. He was a cute little kid. But we were always looking for money. And I remember Gene Snow, when I was pregnant with Heather, he said, "Now, Susie, you don't have to pay me this money back, but I know you're going to have a baby, and I'm going to give you $500 just to help you out. And don't tell Trip, because he'll go buy something. He'll go buy a toy or something." And I go, okay, Gene. Well, I paid him back, but he was a lifesaver. And we ran on the barnstorming with the Jungle Jim Liebermans and all of the guys from the Midwest and back
Cal had a
east.
funny car, Coca-Cola.
Yeah, so he won that championship, but it was just he and I. So then I was like the bottom end man. So I'd crawl underneath and get the oil pan off, and then I'd pop the pistons out to him, and then he'd pop them back down, or he'd check the rings, and so I would do that. Grease in the hair, stopping at truck stops to wash the grease out of my hair. Back in the 70s, we didn't have these nice truck stops. We didn't have Buc-ee's or any of this stuff. So I'm in the drinking fountain trying to wash the grease out of my hair. Hot summer nights.
But it was a passion.
It was a hard road. Now it looks glamorous because all the wives fly in, and we were barnstorming back then. We'd race Detroit on a Wednesday night, and we'd race Dragway 42 on Thursday night. Friday night we'd race in Chicago, Dragway 32, which was a scary place to race.
Why?
Because they bet on you.
Yes, I've heard this.
Yes, and one night I heard a pop and a guy fell. We had our trailers and trucks pulled right behind the grandstands, and a guy fell out of the grandstand. Somebody shot him, and they would come over to you seriously, say, "You will win. I have money on you. You will win." And I'm like, I want to just go home.
Yeah. For several sportsman type cars with radiators,
Yeah.
make the statement that if they lost, they're so afraid they just drove down the highway.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're afraid that they were
Yeah.
going to meet a demise.
Yeah, they'd meet
But that was
Broadway Freddie Denane. He was out of New York, and he was nice to us, but you always wanted to be on his nice side because he was mafia.
You know, there's a story if you look up, you Google Broadway Freddie
Yeah.
drag racing, and there's the drag racing brought together a whole lot of different people. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Broadway Freddie, that'd be a story all in itself.
It is.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's interesting to read about him.
we went to his shop when we were working for Coletta. We were racing down on Log Island, and Coletta had broke apart, and so he went back to. He had this little Sky King airplane, and he would drive. He'd fly parts for Ford. Is how he got his start, and he'd be flying off, getting parts, and fly home. And so we took it into the Bronx where Freddie had his shop, and it was extremely dark neighborhood. I'm the only girl, and I was, long blonde hair, and
You stood out.
yeah, I was a little tiny thing back then. And Broadway, as soon as we got out of the big truck, he said, "Do not look at her, do not touch her." And I'm like, okay, I'm with him, I'm with Broadway.
Don't touch my stuff. I'll take care of you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that was, Connie Coletta. That's his story is amazing. Like from the Sky King type of airplane
Yeah.
to now I think he has 22 747s now and numerous other jets. But
Yeah.
there's all these great stories in drag racing that. Good thing they made money somewhere else so they could afford to go drag racing.
He just turned 87.
Yes, God bless him. He's
Yeah.
quite the character. Did Trip ever drive anything for him?
He drove, back we were in Boston at a Sunday race, barnstorming race, or the guy brought in like 6 or 8 funny cars, and Coletta didn't show up. And of course there were not cell phones back then. And so they called him on the phone, and he says, "No, you're socked in. I'm watching the weather. I can't fly in, and you're not racing." And we're like, "Well, guess what? There's a little spot of sunlight right over the drag strip." And the guy said, "Get in those cars and run." Shirley was there with her funny car. And so Coletta's a little bigger than Trip. So he got in the silver fire suit, and we tucked it in, literally. And I took the 200-mile-an-hour tape and wrapped him in it like a mummy to hold it together. And Shirley was furious because Trip could not drive her boyfriend's car. She yelled and screamed and threw a little tantrum. She was not one of our favorite people. And so he ran the pass and he got paid. Coletta thought it was hysterical. He said, "Good for you. You were thinking of me, and you made the money. That's all that mattered." So yeah, that was the one time. And then Shirley had to apologize to me after the races.
Well,
That was a coup.
yeah, I tell you, the time heals a lot of things, and think what you want about Shirley, and I definitely had a lot of thoughts, not favorable, but also as we get older, we kind of look at better vision with her. Hindsight's 20/20.
She did good for the sport.
She's good for the sport. She had a lot of pressure on her that we didn't really see what that ceiling was like. The one thing most people say about drag racing that we all have in common is that why did you like drag racing? Let me ask you. What was the most thing? What you enjoyed most about drag racing?
The fans. They were incredible, and like I said, it was just Trip and I so many times without help, and so we go to racetracks, and the same people would show up because they knew I might ask them to change the oil or to drive the tow truck, or a lot of times Coletta had this huge big truck. It was a ramp truck, and you couldn't take that up to the starting line and start the car and go down the track. So we'd use people's cars, and I'd just go in the stands and ask somebody if they had a pickup truck or whatever, would you help us? So we really got to be friends with the fans in all of these drag strips, the smaller ones like Lancaster you know, the Chicago
The-
Drag
the
Race
people.
42. The people is what makes it.
Yeah, that's the number one answer. If we were doing the Family Feud and we had the number one answer,
Yes.
that would be number one answer with a 99.9%.
Now, see, Prudhomme was not one of the friendliest guys, and he and Johnny Loper had a feud from forever, and we liked. I mean, Lynn Prudhomme, his wife, and his little daughter Donna Prudhomme, and Heather, my daughter, were about the same age, and they'd play together in the back seat of the trucks, and we'd play with him. And I even went over to Prudhomme's house, and when he walked in from working all day, he just kind of like, "There's a Shumake in my house." Where's Loper? Yeah.
He's quite the character. I had
Yeah.
lunch with him this past year at the SEMA Hall of Fame luncheon. Got to sit with him and Don Garlitz, and it was like fantastic. And we actually talked about Tripp in those days and how much he liked Tripp, and couldn't understand why Loper didn't like him. And I said, you know, rest in peace, John Loper, but you didn't like him because you beat him. John, I competed against him in business, and John didn't like me as long as I was competing in business. Once I wasn't competing any longer, we became great friends.
Yeah.
John just set himself up. John Loper, if you're the enemy, you're not my friend. I
Right.
want to beat you. I want to one up you, and that's, you know, when you
That's
go
his
back and we look at
nature.
this thing in hindsight, that was his nature. That's
Yeah.
how he grew up. That's how he got through how his childhood is. He had to be the tough guy.
And you get him alone, and I would, after we quit driving for him, I'd call him because he was mad at Tripp because nobody quits Loper, you know. And we went to lunch one day, and he goes, "Why do you keep bugging me and calling me?" I go, "Because you're my friend. You're our friend." And he was almost in tears. And I went last time I saw him. He was in a wheelchair, and he was at Kathy Wolfswinkel. John and Kathy Wolfswinkel had a kind of a celebration of life for Loper, and he came out in his wheelchair and saw everybody. So it was good.
That's awesome. He was definitely the relationship changed a whole lot towards the end there. That he was more concerned about me, I think, than, you know, how you doing, what's going on, you know, making suggestions. And I think as you know, he was a good guy, and you know, we miss people like that. So you know, Tripp, probably the longest stint was it in Johnny's car?
Yeah, that was 4 years with John.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did Tripp leave Johnny, or did Johnny just say we're going home? The story
Yeah.
I was told is that they're at a race and Johnny wasn't there, and they tuned the car away that Johnny didn't like.
Dan Gear was
and he
with
pulled
us.
the plug on the deal, said, "That's it."
He got mad because the guys raced the car without him, and James was with us. We were down south somewhere, and John got mad because it wasn't the setup he would have used, and I think they hurt some parts, and it was an ugly time. And then he came to the races. I think we were going to the Spring Nationals in Columbus, Ohio, and he showed up there, and he was not happy. So they mutually parted ways, and that was kind of the demise of Little Haas. And
But-
so then he drove for Billy Meyer for a couple of races, and that's when he drove for Billy, he got the 250 mile an hour ring.
The last spot in it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then he got the Krager 5-second club. We were in Atlanta, Georgia when he won that race, and he ran 5 seconds.
I've got some of those decals.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. I worked for Krager for a while,
That's right.
and then opened the door up one day, and then
Well, they
I
moved
have to
over here.
yeah, they were in Tempe.
Yeah.
We moved that. Yeah, so Mr. Joe Ruck owned Krager. I was actually working for the exhaust division, but I was shared an office with the Krager brand manager guy, and I go,
Did he own Mr. Gasket too?
Joe Rucko and Mr. Gasket, which is a huge family of companies, and he bought it and he sold it, and then he bought it back, and eventually sold it all off again. But the Krager was the 5-second club sponsor, and
So what year did Krager come over here? Was it like 92 or 3?
it had to be right about 90, 91, 92.
Because Tripp and I got a divorce after 23 years. I'd ask him for the divorce. He would not, if it didn't have a motor, he wouldn't do it. And one of his friends told him that when we were out camping. and he had always had a souped up whatever 3-wheeler, dune buggy.
Go-karts.
Yeah, go-karts, crashed and burned in that sucker. And we were gonna hike up the hill, and they said, "Come on, Trip, go with us." He goes, "Nope." And the guy turned around and looked at him, and he said, "Shumake, if it doesn't have a motor, you won't do it." And when he said that, that really struck a chord, because I worked for Channel 3 for 4 years, and I had all these awesome tickets to go all these events. I worked in community relations, in front row seats to everything: football, basketball, the carnival, the circus. And he wouldn't go unless it was something he really liked. And I'm like, we never went to a concert. We never went even to the movies. We'd go to Manzanita, we go to PIR, and we go to La Cucaracha for dinner. Never went anywhere else but La Cucaracha.
That was the official restaurant.
Yeah.
The Roach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was like, there's more out there. There's life out there. And he just wouldn't do it. And the kids were all depressed, and they're like, why? Let's go do something,
So, perfect segue. Along the way you had a couple great kids.
Yeah,
So we had Heather and Travis,
yep,
and Travis, a lot of people in drag racing are fully aware of his endeavors in top fuel racing, and trying to get through there, and I think he's done a pretty good job so far. We'll talk about him in a second. Tell us about Heather.
Heather is now 47. She was born and raised at the racetrack. Trip was driving for John Powers Steel, and we had decided, we were married for 6 years before I got pregnant, because being on the road, it was like, there's no way we can have a kid here. So I had her on my birthday on August 18th, and I told the doctor, I said, this is how this is going to work. I says, I'm having the baby on this weekend. It was August 20th was the due date. I says, because we have to go to Indy in about 10 days. And he says, well, okay, we'll work on that. And so Elvis Presley died, and I was coming back from the hospital, and Powers was at our house, and he looks at me and he goes, Elvis died. And I'm like, I'm going to have a baby tomorrow. And so they induced labor, and I had Heather on my birthday. And Trip and John, they went ahead and went to Indianapolis. And then when he came home, that's when Loper and him started talking about driving Little Haas. And so 3 months after Heather was born, we threw her in the back seat of Loper's dually and went to Orange County, California. And Chris Economaki was there. That was the Wild World of Sports back then. And he goes, where's that little girl with the headphones? And that's how Heather was born and raised.
Well, there's a lot of pictures of her.
Wearing the
Yeah,
headphones. I'm like, she's going with us because I'm not staying home. So
Well,
she was up there until she was in kindergarten.
So where's Heather now?
Heather is in Colorado Springs. She has 2 beautiful grandkids. I have 2 beautiful grandkids. Connor's 23, and he's an electrician in Colorado Springs, and Cassie is going to be 20, and she's going to the University of Arkansas. She's, what are they called? The pigs, the hogs, the
Razorbacks?
Razorbacks, yeah. She's a pig.
Yeah. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, well, yeah, Grandma, I can't believe you said that.
Oh, she'll still see that.
Yeah.
But Heather wrote a book.
She did.
Tell us about the book.
240 Shorty Shumake. And I named him that, and one of the gentlemen that used to be an announcer, Steve,
Steve
heard
Evans.
me, yeah, Steve Evans, he heard me make that comment to him, because Trip was 5'5" on a good day, and I was 5'7". And so I never wore heels, because I was like Sonny and Cher. We were like that much difference. And he would, so Steve started calling him 240 Shorty. And that's what Heather called her book. And she called up and met with tons of the old racers, and they told a story. And she wanted it to be a light, funny story, or a little bit of history about how did you know my dad. And then I had tons of pictures, so she went through them. And it's a good book. It's a nice book to read. And Trip and I, when he was killed in November 13th, it would have been our 28th wedding anniversary, November 12th. And we were going to go out to dinner to celebrate our would have been anniversary. We were still best friends, talked to each other every single day. And then he was killed on his Harley. So, but she wrote that book, and she's real proud of it, and she should be.
It's still like Amazon?
I think it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon,
Yeah, 240
yeah.
Shorty Shumake.
Yeah, in the reference to 240 Shorty was, there was a racer from Canada called 240 Cordy.
Yes.
Cordy Bonnet.
Yeah.
And everybody, you know, that was very apropos. I mean, Tripp, you know, I remember, well, Tripp's story, I remember there was one race, Eloy, Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he's driving, was it the sheep? Was he driving the sheep?
He was driving the sheep herder.
And something wasn't right, and he wasn't happy. Made the pass, drove it all the way down, drove it back up the return road, and parked it up in the trailer. Yeah, I mean, this is the wildest thing I ever saw. I was like,
Back then, and you know this, Chris, those cars, the fuel alters, they were crazy. They never ever went straight. They went from one side of the guardrail to the other side. They were dangerous and crazy. And as much as I liked John Alleman, I did not like that car. I go, you're gonna die in this car?
and that was a true short wheelbase car. It wasn't,
Yeah, it was. It was a beautiful car, and John was crazy, Alleman. He was fun to be around. But he knew I did not like Tripp driving that car.
Well, you drove it back up in the trailer. It was the wildest thing I ever saw. And this one of my many memories of Tripp. Heather had a great book. If you haven't had a chance to read it, I really recommend you do it. You can was the Kindle, the book, you can actually do a
Kindle
book. It's available on that. I think that's how we got it. My wife and I got it. My wife just loved it. She read all about it, and Heather, you know, good job on that. You really did a good job rekindling a lot of memories of Tripp and a lot of great memories. Let's talk about Travis.
Okay.
Travis is living the life. He lives in New York, I believe,
He does.
but he's got the Arizona in his blood still. But he decided. What made him decide he's gone top fuel racing?
He'll be racing at Firebird. That's his home track, and he loves it. And I told Tripp, I said, you need to get Travis involved in something, baseball, something, anything. He loved music. He liked redecorating my house every other day. Christmas ornaments out of control at the house. I says, let's get him in sports of some sort. And I says, how about the go-kart? There was that new go-kart track that was out there, and Travis is 40 years old now. And so Tripp went out, and Buddy Rice, his son, they were racing go-karts. So Tripp bought a go-kart from them, a shifter cart, and it'd go like 130 miles an hour. And I said, I don't think Travis is quite ready for that. I was thinking more, we had the little go-karts around the neighborhood, you know, the little gasoline motors.
Briggs and Stratton,
Yeah. And so we all drove it. I'd go out, Heather'd drive it, I'd drive it, Travis would drive it. But Tripp was bound and determined it was going to go so fast, and he won the state championship, and then he crashed it and broke his collarbone and broke some ribs, and he called me coming home from the track. Buddy was taking him to the hospital, and he says, I'm okay. I go, why are you talking so funny? I can't breathe.
But I'm okay.
I'm okay. That was the one thing I always, if I didn't go to the races, which was like twice in the whole time, and he'd call me after the races, so I knew he was okay. Travis is doing the same thing. If I'm not there.
Better check in.
Yeah, you call Mom. And so Tripp crashed, he ran into Coletta actually, a freeze pump or whatever came out of the block of, what was the guy's name in Texas? Kelly Chadwick. And Tripp hit Coletta and went flying, and the car broke his arm. And I had one of his friends was over, and we were talking, and I said, well, Tripp's crashed. And he goes, well, how would you know that? He had no cell phones, no TV. And I said, well, I knew what time they were going to run, and he hasn't called me. And so a couple hours later, he called me, and he was in the hospital getting his arm fixed. So then Travis, a couple years ago, he was driving, and he wanted to get his funny car license, and he'd gone to Frank Hawley School. He goes, Mom, I'm going to go to Frank Hawley School, and I'm going to be a race car driver. And then he decided he wanted to be a funny car, and Dale Worsham would hire it out in the fuel, and he got to the end of the drag strip at Vegas, and he hit the guardrail, hit it pretty hard, and I'm like, Heather was there with him then. I didn't go up. And I said, well, Travis has crashed. We had cell phones then. And I called Heather and Travis, and neither one of them would
So
answer.
you really knew something was up.
They were at the hospital, and they didn't call me. And I'm like, okay, Travis has crashed. And they go, how do you know that? I go, Mom senses that. That's part
Well,
of it.
you get your routine. I mean,
Yeah.
I work up in Prescott, live in the valley here in Phoenix, and I go up there 2 to 3 days a week. And if I don't let Kathy know by a certain time that I've arrived,
Yeah,
that's like something's not right. So, no, you do that, and those calls you are more out of respect and to let you know that everything's okay. And it's not that you made them call you, but it was just out of respect.
Yeah.
I fully get
Call
that.
Mom.
Yeah, call Mom. Let her know you're okay.
now
So
we
it's
can
good.
watch it on TV.
Well, yeah.
We can see it live.
Absolutely, and I watched a lot of that on NHRA.tv because they get. I highly recommend that for people who really like drag racing
Yeah, it
over the
is
Fox
good.
stuff. It's because you can watch all day long. You get you get sportsmen, you get everything you want to see, all of that. But yeah, we watched watch Travis progress, and he's doing a great job. And we're looking forward to seeing him race
Yeah,
at the.
Fry's is going to be his sponsor,
Good.
and he's built a nice relationship there. But Fry's won't take it out on the road because Fry's isn't everywhere.
No,
in
it's a
all the
Kroger
states.
company. Yeah,
Right.
owned by Kroger. He needs to get Kroger to sponsor him, and
Yeah.
then change to the different places that when he's in, like Fred Meyer and all the
Yeah.
different Kroger locations.
Yeah,
Well, we gotta go to work on that, okay? gotta get the kid some more money
yeah,
because I know he'd race full time if he could swing it.
yeah. And Travis has that personality. He lives in New York City. He has a partner, Daryl, and he asked Daryl to marry him on Christmas night. We were on the Staten Island ferry. It was cold and rainy,
Mhm.
and he took him up on the top deck in the rain and asked him to marry him. And then they live upstairs of Delmonico's Steakhouse in downtown Manhattan.
Wow!
And it's fun. So we had a nice dinner at
But how
Delmonico's.
can you not be
that
hungry
night.
all the time? You got the smell from Delmonico's.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But my husband went down with Heather to the bar to watch the Chiefs play that Sunday before, whenever they were playing, Christmas Day, I think, whatever. And I went down just to see him and to look at the game a little bit. And they had 2 drinks and it was $64. And I know that you and your wife have a chairman's meeting and go to the bar a lot.
But the whole dinner is not $64.
Yeah, and I said, let me see this menu. A hot dog, $38.
Must be a real good hot dog.
Yeah, at Delmonico's. But anyway, that's where he lives. He's real creative, and he does weddings. He works for a lady who is actually the wedding planner, and then the day of these $1 million weddings, he orchestrates it.
Cool.
He's got the radios.
It's kind of like what was the Steve Martin and there was a remake of the Spencer Tracy movie, The Father of the Bride.
Father of the
So they
Bride.
had Franz or Hans or whatever the
Yeah.
wedding plan. Is that Travis?
That's Travis. He's like, okay, you over there, Groom, come here. It's time. Let's go. Flowers in place, and he goes in the day of and makes sure everything is set exactly the way it should be.
So
And he takes over.
legendary. Everybody. So what are you doing now? Talk about you.
Like I said, I'll be 75 this summer. I moved up to Pine Top, Lakeside, Arizona in 2002. Got married in 2001, 11 days after 9/11, so it's pretty easy to remember that date. But I still forget. I forget my anniversary. Retired banker. He just loves the outdoors. Learned how to hunt and fish and
How'd you meet him?
sought it out.
What's his name?
I met his name is Jim Anderson. He's older than me, and I can certainly tell it now. When you get older, he's 7 years older than me, but he's 81. He's a cranky old man now, but I think they all get cranky or grumpy or whatever.
I always told people that when somebody gets along in age, and they become more opinionated, more cranky or whatever,
Yeah.
they've earned that right.
Well, his favorite word is no. I'm like, you're like a little baby.
No, what was the question again?
No. Yeah, he does that too. He only wears his hearing aids when we go out somewhere.
So I can hear other people.
Yeah, but at home it's like, what? What? I'm like,
Well,
never mind.
You can tell him we appreciate him. Let you come
Yeah.
down to
I
the
worked
play the valley here.
I worked for the Chamber of Commerce and did events because that's what I did at Channel 3 down here. And I did that for 3 years. I managed a call center up there for 4 or 5 years, and I work at the town of Pine Top Lakeside in the visitor center.
Is Pine Top Lakeside one community
It's
now?
one town.
Did they merge at one time?
Yeah, in 1984, Pine Top was a town, Lakeside is a town. We have 2 zip codes, and it divides right down the middle of Safeway, our one grocery store. And small town, 4,000 people in the winter, 40,000 in the summer.
That's just
Because
busy.
we're at 7,000 feet. We get snow, except for this year. We have nothing. We usually get 20 inches of rain. We got nothing last year, and it doesn't look good this year.
It's amazing because I go to Prescott and used to be Huey and Humboldt, and then now it's Dewey and Humboldt.
Dewey, yeah.
Now it's Dewey Humboldt, and we know the nickname is Humdew. But it's like smaller towns kind of merge and they put their
Yeah.
resources together, and actually it's a lot better for everybody involved.
Yeah, because we have Snowflake Taylor up there, we have Springerville, Eager, and they didn't incorporate, they're both towns, but you always say,
The community.
I'm going to Snowflake Taylor, Hebrew Overguard.
Well, good for you. So you found a place you like in Arizona.
Love it, we're up in the woods, and we have a beautiful custom home in a little black lab that when you get older, you appreciate your dog. I mean, she's our little girl, and we love her. I mean, I'm homesick right now. I've been here one day, and I want to go home and see Allie. I didn't say anything about Jim. I just want to go
Where's
home
the
and see
dog?
Allie.
No, I truly get it. We've been dog lovers forever, and because we have grandkids in Idaho and grandkids in Oregon, and I still travel a bit for business. So it's like, now there's nobody to watch the dogs. The dog is like a child, unless you have somebody there. So we love to have another dog, but just not there. And we'll sit there and go, we really wish we had a dog, but so good for you.
Yeah.
Nothing better than I understand exactly where you're coming from. That
Yeah.
family from Oregon came down at Christmas time, and they brought their dog with them. They were in Phoenix for 2 weeks, and one thing I remember most about the dog is that with a dog you don't have to clean up crumbs.
Yeah, exactly.
I said, oh, there's a good reason to have a dog again. Well, Susie, this has been a great conversation, and
Well, thank you for having me.
all the legendary things, and Tripp represented Arizona well. You represented Arizona very well. Heather, what a sweetheart. The book was awesome, and it was really good for everybody to read it, that new trip. And I've yet to hear anybody that, a lot of people contributed their stories about Tripp, which is really great about it, because it's kind of a collection of people's thoughts and ideas, kind of like we're trying to do with these videos. We wish Tripp was still here. We unfortunately, he's not, but we know he went to be with the Lord. Tripp was big into his church.
Yes.
His dad was a preacher, or was in a church?
No, well, his dad and mom went to a Baptist church.
That's what it was. Okay.
He grew up in the Baptist church,
Right.
and then in 1976, we were racing a lot, so we were never home. And one of his friends, Greg, invited us to go to church, to North Phoenix Baptist Church, and we went, and it was a monster church. And we went and had, we really enjoyed it. I did. And I didn't grow up in any church. But when I was a little girl, my mom would send us down to the little Baptist church out in the country. And then I found Jesus. And so then I got saved and baptized in North Phoenix Baptist Church in '76. He'd run over my foot with a race car and broke it. We were out at Mel Larson's, and I said, my foot. And he goes, well, I'm still racing. So they carried me up into the grandstands. By this time, my foot is so swollen. And the ambulance guy helped us, and he goes, you'll be fine, let's just go home. So we lived in a second-story apartment on 7th Avenue. And we went home, and it was really blowing up. And he goes, let's soak it in hot water. That's not what you do with thinking it's a sprain. And then it started screaming at me. So we went to John C. Lincoln and got an x-ray. And the guy, I says, is it broken? And he goes, well, we'll let the doctor talk to you. And I go, you tell me right now, is that sucker broken? And he goes, yes, ma'am, it is. So I was in the wheelchair, and I wheeled out into the lobby. It's broken. To Tripp, and he's like, I'm sorry.
Oh, like you say, he's a racer.
Yeah.
I know that he was a youth minister.
He and I were directors of the college Bible study department for several years, And the reason that I'm down here this weekend is our first Bible study teachers for the young marrieds, Jim and Ginger Carter, she passed away. We were having a celebration of life, and I haven't seen these people from church in probably 30 years. So had a wonderful celebration of life for Ginger Carter and got to see old friends. But Tripp was a really devout Christian.
Yes, he was.
And he would do a lot of speaking at different events. Ken Bowers, which everybody knows Bowers.
Races for Christ.
Yes. He would have him come to his church out in Tempe, and he would do a special. He'd always have race cars out there and stuff. So.
I remember talking to Tripp one time. We were in Pomona, and we were racing the comp limiter back then, but we're kind of over the fence kind of conversation. And he goes, I go, how you doing? And he was racing for Billy Meyer. And
Okay.
he goes, I'm here, but I think my calling, I really need to be at the church. I go, I can understand that, but do you realize by you being the person you are, you show a lot of people that it's okay to be a racer and be a Christian at the same time.
Right, you're absolutely right.
You're serving God just by being here and you being you. And I'm really blessed that I've had him in my life, like a lot of people are. His funeral was like unbelievable, off the hook. A lot of people there.
I had about 1,500 people at his funeral.
It was amazing. I only went to a funeral, Gordy Rivera's funeral. It was the same thing in his area. Gordy and Tripp were a lot alike each other,
They
personality
were good
wise.
friends, too.
Great people, and they both drew a lot of people to them. But Susie, it's been we've been wanting to do this for some time.
Yeah.
Our new format, definitely Tripp's the Arizona drag race legend in his own. You are, but the Shumake family, you guys did a lot, and a lot of the legendary part of a lot of people's memories of the golden days of drag racing in Arizona, and how well you guys all represented Arizona and went nationally. So.
Yeah, he was doing some color commentation out at Firebird for a while when he stopped driving, and but we would say a prayer every day when we get up and go to the races, and we just say, Lord, just let me do the best I can do and be proud of it. And he mentioned that on TV one time. That was kind of him speaking out. And when he won the World Finals at Orange County in Billy Meyer's car, they interviewed me, and I just kept saying, well, we just thank God. Mm-hmm. We thank the Lord for having us here and keeping him safe and alive and healthy. We're just so thankful for the Lord. And they cut that all out. I know how you guys work. You just cut that out. And I'm like, you're going to hear such a testimony from me. No testimony. I'm just happy for Tripp. And I'm like, what happened to the rest of the stuff I talked about?
It doesn't matter. It does matter, but it doesn't matter because people know you, know Tripp, and
they can see Jesus through me.
I believe in you live in your actions, and some people like Alice Cooper, he's very, very much a Christian, and but he says he's one of the warrior guys in the trenches. He's not one of the guys who's going to lead the charge, because that's not, people won't believe him anyways. Well, so he has to do by his actions. He has to prove people by his actions.
Right. Travis was good friends with his daughter. Travis knows everybody. And he was, one time I got home from work and I had a message on my message machine, and I picked it up and he goes, Alice says, Travis, this is Alice. You didn't return the video you promised you would take back to Blockbuster, and now they're calling me. You take that video back, son. And I'm like, oh, cool. Alice Cooper just called to say, take the video back.
That's classic. So.
Yeah.
Well, Arizona's had a lot of great people here, and we still do, and we're proud to be Arizonans, and proud of our Arizona drag racing family. And Susie, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate your time.
I enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it, so you have a great day.
Okay, thanks.